What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be going over counter-controlled repetition in C++. We're going to be going over the basics of counter-controlled repetition in C++, I should say. So for starters, I cannot get OBS to work on my laptop, so I have to record it using my phone, so I apologize in advance for that. But we'll start with the question, what is counter-controlled repetition? Counter-controlled repetition is essentially a way for your program to keep track of how many times it's done a certain task. Be that assigning new variables, performing an operation, so on and so on. So, one type of counter-controlled repetition, and what we're going to be going over today, is called a while loop. And I've got that right here, while loop. And a while loop uses 4 key components to demonstrate to perform its counter-controlled repetition. Those 4 components are a counter variable, and a counter variable is going to be the variable that we use to keep track of how many times we've done whatever task we need to do. Second key feature is the initial value of the counter variable, which I have in line 13. The initial value of the counter variable is going to be what we assign to that variable to begin with. In most cases it'll be 0, but in some cases you might want to start at like 2 or 3 or something. Okay, going on next, we have a condition to see if the loop will continue. And basically our condition to see if the loop will continue, what that is essentially it's the max number of times we want to do something. So say we only want to perform a task 10 times, we'll see if the task has been done 10 times or not, and that's our test. And lastly, we need a method to increment the counter. An increment is just a fancy programming word for increase. So we need a method to increase the counter so we know how many times we've actually done something. So if we scroll down a little bit here, I actually do have a while loop set up. Let me go and get rid of a few things right here by commenting them out because we're not discussing them yet. Alright, so let me fix that really fast too. Alright, so for starters, as you can see, we have our unsigned int counter equals 0, and what that unsigned int is that's our counter variable. And the reason we have that unsigned keyword in front of it is unsigned is a keyword that keeps a variable from ever becoming negative, which is good for us because we don't want to do a project or a task a negative number of times. So moving on, we have unsigned int counter equals 0, and that's just saying that our initial value of the counter variable, which is the second thing I outlined, is going to be starting at 0. Moving on into the actual while loop in line 21, if that'll focus. Yep, in line 21, we have while counter is less than or equal to 10, and that's our test condition. So basically, while the value of counter is less than 10, we're going to stay inside the while loop that I have in the curly brackets here. So that's our third big key feature. And lastly, we need what's called a method to increment the counter, and we're going to be able to see that down here in line 24 with our plus plus counter. And what plus plus counter does is every time that the program runs across this line, it's going to increase the value of counter by 1. So the first time that we go through the program, the value is going to be at 0 until it hits that once, and then it's going to go to 1, etc., etc. So what actually happens in this while loop? So what this while loop does is it's this line here in 23, cout, counter, and then the empty space. And the empty space is just to put a space between everything. What that's going to do is it's going to print the value of counter, and then in the very next line it's going to increase the value of the counter by 1, and then go back to the beginning and start all over. So when we run this up here in the local debugger, we should see that it prints out the integers 0 through 10. So we'll make sure that that works. Oh, Visual Studio decided to be ignorant. Okay, let me try that again. Sometimes Visual Studio just decides to not work like it's supposed to, so we'll try that again here. Yep, see right up here in the top right. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's the basics of counter-controlled repetition. I'm going to go ahead and exit that. Now to show you some changes that you can make to this to achieve some different things. Say you wanted to print all the integers from 0 to 20, you can do that just by changing that 10 into a 20. And now when you run the program, you'll see it prints the integers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20.